just because of chronic stress and persecution over years, I end up nearly dead in hospital. And that was a whole world of so many people are so unwell, even people with access to the best in the world.
Welcome to the Block and Tackle Show, hosted by Carl Block. Carl is a partner in the law firm of Loeb & Loeb here in Los Angeles, California. He'll be tackling some of the biggest issues in business today. Welcome to the show.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of the Block and Tackle Show. Today, I have an incredibly distinguished guest. As I mentioned to her when I met her, one of the most interesting women in the world. And it's, again, a pleasure to have her. And she is Elizabeth Angel. Now, just to sort of talk about her background, so it'll be so obvious to you how interesting she really is. She's lived in way more countries than any one of us. In fact, probably twice as many countries or 3 times as many countries as any of us has ever lived in. She's an accomplished speaker. She's produced award shows, and she's very savvy about science and technology. In the defense area, she put together an emergency response task force with NATO. And she also founded an organization called Women in Defense in NATO, highlighting women at the senior level in defense. And wait till we talk about her new venture. Elizabeth, welcome to the Block and Tackle Show.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be on the show. I'm very excited to discuss the most important topic in the whole world, which is, of course, our health. Because when we have health, we have everything. And when we don't, well, we have nothing.
And that's great. And I know we're going to talk about holistic health. This is just all cutting edge. Everything you're going to talk about is cutting edge today. So I hope that my viewers and listeners are really going to enjoy this. So as you would expect, someone would ask you, well, okay, what about your background made you so interested in health?
Well, I would have to say everything. So many things. For starters, I was literally born into trauma. So my mom died at the age of 19 on my father's 21st birthday. I was 10 months old, and 10 months old sounds like a baby who wouldn't understand much, but I was walking around her grave at her funeral, looking very distressed in the photos. Less than a year later, to give you context, I was reading fluently at the age of 2. So that tells a little bit about my understanding and comprehension at the time. Then at 3 years old, I'm separated from my father for years and moved to a different country. And there's really this idea that our emotions and beliefs about ourselves, others in life, are formed in these first 7 years of our lives. Because when we're young, our brain isn't fully developed. So like if a 3-year-old gets yelled at, for example, they're probably not going to rationalize that, okay, the person doing that is having a bad day. And just talking with thousands of people around the world, it seems like there's these 20 or so disempowering beliefs that people seem to take on at a young age as identities because of experiences that happen to them. They could be things like, I'm not safe, I'm not loved. And what happens is if we don't become aware of them and make them conscious, then we can end up living our entire lives on some sort of autopilot because of these beliefs we got when we were toddlers or very young, right? And so most of the world is like, I like to say, like emotional toddlers walking around in adult bodies.
Oh.
So because my belief was I'm alone, and I had a whole life of evidence for that, what followed over the next decades of my life was that for some reason or another, my family would get broken up. It didn't matter which country we were in or what residences and passports we would get. The laws of that country would change, deny us visas, and break us up. And then just when I thought, like, now I'm untouchable, literally the same month I got my quote unquote passport to freedom, someone started committing a bunch of racist crimes and ended up breaking up my family and making it impossible for us to live together in the same country. So these beliefs formed in the first years of our lives are more powerful, I think, than anything else in the world. So then the big question becomes, how do you change them? And that's really what we've gathered in our one-stop solution with the latest science and technology coupled with ancient wisdoms.
So given those traumas that you went through, did it manifest itself in physical health issues, mental health issues? I mean, it sounds like you've been through more in your life than 100 people. And you have your observations based on that. It must have been really hard.
So I was generally healthy most of my life. I guess when you're born into trauma, you don't know that's just your default. So you don't know anything else but that. I think it just there reaches like a tipping point where it's just too much. There's a saying, the body keeps the score, a name of a book. And so it just reaches that breaking point where your body can't take any more. And then your immune system and everything starts to sort of collapse and overstress and goes into this kind of continual fight or flight mode, if you will.
Understood. And I can imagine that, again, you'd have physical manifestations of that, but also, emotional challenges. That's what anybody would have, wouldn't they, if you went through all of these things in all these countries and never were settled, never had peace, never had consistency. It must have been really hard on you.
And the irony of it is, like, I was fine my whole life, but it was when I had the easiest life. There was no real challenges. I didn't, for the first time in my life, a normal 9 to 5 job. I was working in corporate finance, and suddenly I was more miserable than I had ever been in my entire life, because now I had the space to sort of stop and reflect and feel all those emotions that I hadn't felt up until that point.
And I'm assuming that would have been one of the catalysts for the new venture that you're in.
Yes, absolutely. So, what we call healthcare systems today, they're very much sick care systems. Like, when was the last time someone went to the doctor and was like, "Hey, doc, I'm here, because I'm healthy and living my best life. And I was wondering, could you help me optimize my wellness or longevity?" That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. And when I started breaking down, people were like, "You should go get help." And I was like, "Yes, I absolutely want to get this thing called help." And yeah, that was my experience was, yeah, a big story.
No, I can appreciate that. So then you decide that you're seeing firsthand, probably seeing other people, that we have this system where there really isn't this great emphasis on preventative care. It's already happened to you. You don't know what to do except that you're trained to just go through a health system where they treat your symptoms potentially, but they're not super focused on wellness, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so I went through both the physical and mental healthcare systems. So during that time, I was evaluated by 12 psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. And what they essentially do is they give you a bunch of questionnaires, and you have to answer these questionnaires. And based on these questionnaires, they decide what's happening in your brain. And I would just remember one of the questions that really stood out to me. I think it's used in all the mental health. It's definitely in the diagnosis tool that they're using around the world. And it was something like, "Do you believe you were born to be miserable?" And I remember thinking, if I answer this question as my birth country, India, where people believe in many lives and karma, and I say, yes, that's simply a cultural thing. But if I answer it as a white Finnish person in the country I'm being diagnosed in, the person saying yes is probably really depressed. So this is a trick question. How do I answer it so that I can get the help I need? And that's just one example.
No, that makes sense. I mean, if your system is designed as a one size fits all, and it's the mass assembly healthcare, you're not maybe focusing actually on the patient in front of you in a holistic way, it sounds like. And for you, again, because you've lived in so many countries and you've been exposed to so many cultures, a healthcare system isn't going to be designed for people who may have incredibly diverse backgrounds or even have complex, symptoms. It's just not typically there. So then you see this, you deal with this, you deal with the exasperation of dealing with healthcare professionals who may not have heard you, may not have understood you. And in your mind, I guess it's okay, there's got to be something different. There's got to be something else that will work because this isn't working. And I would bet that at some point you say, I bet you I'm not the only person in the world for whom this isn't working, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The sick world was, I had been healthy my entire life. So I was a athlete in the Finnish nationals, because on the health journey, people say you should exercise and then you'll be happy. So I was like, I don't like to exercise. Let me go compete bodybuilding. And then just because of chronic stress and persecution over like years, I end up nearly dead in hospital. And that was a whole world of so many people are so unwell, even people with access to the best in the world. And I think the problem really is that industries are siloed. So like if we zoom out from health for a second, tech doesn't mix with music and music doesn't mix with nuclear. And then even if we look at the body, neurology doesn't mix with endocrinology. And, we're not just an arm or a leg or an organ. We're all of these complex systems together. And so it makes perfect common sense that we should be treated as a whole rather than as these individual pieces of us.
Okay, and I mean, I can't argue with that, and that's one of the reasons why you're here. So you decide there's got to be this better way. You do research, you think about it, you meet interesting people. Tell us a little bit about the journey of how you literally started Agora and have been pushing it forward.
I spent thousands of hours. If there would be like a PhD for self-development, I'd probably have it. Thousands of hours over a decade, studying everything I could get my hands on the internet, on YouTube, finding world leaders in these different fields, doctors, scientists, following them, interviewing them, going into media so that I could get closer to them, in some cases even working with them, promoting them, just so I could really learn and understand. And I did find some good stuff. And so when I was like, here's the system, it's broken, what do? I decided that I wasn't going to give up and I'm going to find everything. And the good news for everybody is that solutions to basically all health things exist. That's the great news. The maybe, what Agora is doing and what we're working on is we're closing those silos and bringing those solutions together in an easy, more accessible way. And that was on that journey. I met Dr. Olivia Lesler. She's a medical doctor, my co-founder, and a psychoneuroimmunologist. So the intersection of psychology, the brain, and the immune system, sort of from an evolutionary perspective. And we went around the world with our team of doctors and scientists. We attended thousands of conferences, went through millions of technologies, and we were like, this is it. We can see what's happening, 15 billion miles away in outer space. We've got to figure out what's happening in our own bodies and brains. So that's really the DNA of what we're doing.
It's great. And, when we talk about the technical stuff of Agora, it's going to be really interesting. And I think our viewers and listeners are really going to enjoy it. But what is, when we sort of unpack this, when we sort of unpack Agora, what is it that is going to make you probably may already be, but the next great resource, people who have the gravitas and the intelligence for people to really look at health and wellness through your platform?
So the good thing about coming at it from a patient perspective is most people needed help yesterday. They don't have another 10 to 20 years, for the research to be done and the money to be raised and the marketing. People need help and they needed it yesterday. And so we're really coming from it from that angle. What's the best that exists on the planet? And when I use the word best, I mean measurably best, scientifically measurably best, that really moves the needle in the millions of biomarkers and biometrics that we have access to today. And then how can we put it together to treat the body as a whole? As we just said, the body is this whole being, and then make it easy for anybody to access. So the basic version of our solution, our one-stop solution, it's free. You can literally call and a number here in the US for free. And when you call, you listen to music, which has frequencies that measurably relax your nervous system. So that's like the most basic version. Then we have, platform, community, technologies. We have all the way up to medical that can be integrated into hospitals for better patient outcomes. So there's really no reason why people couldn't heal when they have the best access to what's available.
Okay, and so is this something that the patients would be a touch point, but even healthcare providers would too? I mean, what's the universe of people that would take part in your Agora ecosystem?
There's no one that health doesn't touch. So absolutely start with the consumers. At the same time, we're very much working with the existing systems. So hospitals, if they install our solution, this is going to help them to have better patient outcomes. Small clinics, they're like one person with a lot of clients to attend to. So we're optimizing their time to help them give more personalized preventative attention to their patients. Schools, if you don't have access to a medical person, there are plenty of FDA approved technologies that you can use right there. Things like neurofeedback, transcranial photobiomodulation, vagus nerve stimulation. So there's so many tools that can be used in your gym, for sports teams, children at home. There's something for everyone there.
Okay. And so when they participate, they can see data, they can see technologies. What's the full suite of what they would get exposed to if they download what you have?
Yeah. So we've even made it that you don't have to download anything.
Okay.
So even if you don't have a smartphone, you can still get help. I think no one should have a monopoly on health. It's something that everybody should be able to access, and they should at least be able to access the information for health and wellness and have that in an easy to understand way. Because for so long, we've needed like translators in the form of physicians and doctors to tell us what's happening in our bodies and brains. And this is complicated because there simply aren't enough of them to go around. There's not enough compared to the amount of sick people. So it's just giving them easy access, from the ability to ask things, to join live calls where they can ask their questions, and then to be able to go through using machine learning to basically pinpoint what is going wrong for them. So right now, when you're sick, you're looking like for a needle in a haystack. What on earth could be wrong with me? And that wastes a lot of time and money, which patients don't have. So with our solution, you're able to pinpoint very quickly what you need to look at, and then what actions you can take, who you need to go see, etc.
I
So
see.
if you have a wearable, absolutely you can plug it in.
Understood. So, but basically, for the consumer, the end user, you're giving them information that they could say to a healthcare provider about what they've seen, what they've read, or what's out there. And so that the healthcare provider doesn't just hear, oh, well, I've got a temperature, or, my stomach hurts, or something like that. Is that right?
Definitely, when we ask better questions, we get better answers. If a doctor has 15 minutes with the patient, which is the case in many, public healthcare, for example, 15 minutes could go literally just typing stuff in, and technology has made it possible to save and optimize that time. So now if I'm going to a doctor and I have 15 minutes and I already know I've been tracking my sleep, I've been using a vagus nerve stimulator, I can show the doctor like, okay, this is all going good. This is what I'm eating. Here's what I think is going wrong based on the tool I used. Right away, the doctor's time is saved, and they're able to use their expertise to help you in the best possible way.
Thanks for tuning in. If you want more info on the show, please visit blockandtackleshow.com. And you can also email me at carl@blockandtackleshow.com. Thanks for tuning in.